I see. Shagging aliens, something to look forward to. Oh, there are people commenting. Oh, we've
Yeah,
got
just
recording
the
again.
one question is, yeah, it's David Hilbert. So it's yeah, all these mathematicians that try to get formal logic on a firm footing. So they try to get Zimmerler-Fraenkel logic, and so it's Whitehead as well. And yeah, it's a fascinating thing. It went unnoticed largely from from our purview. But anyway, carry on with what you were saying about, especially about the J word.
Yeah,
I think
so
he can't
I was just kind of analyzing the human um, association with meaning, and I have kind of a complicated relationship with it because for a lot of my life I was controlled by sociopaths with meaning, um, and that's like the way that I was manipulated. And I think that's a very common way, like nationalism and religion and things like that. That's the lever that is used to get mass adoption of things. And I think jihadis, for example, um, like people in ISIS, probably have among the most meaningful lives of anyone on Earth. Um, and that's because they're absolutely certain of what they're doing, and they have an answer to all questions, and they have the most divine purpose in their life. And so I see there can be meaning in like this rebellion type of thing, um, uh, and I see the danger in hope. Um, but how do you? A lot of these people in these techno utopians, I don't think I can get them across the line to be like, okay, um, to become doomers, but like they are super. A lot of them are good people. They want what's best for most of humanity, and I was wondering how you would reach out to people like that, and
So
also,
that's the biggest. Oh yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, also just the analysis of meaning as a influencer.
Yeah, so these people are our biggest problem now, and like I've been posting stuff saying that climate denial is over. It's just basically a mopping up operation. I know very staunch climate denying conservatives, and they're not arguing for they're not denying climate anymore. So clearly that battle is over. Now there's a new battle where they're completely different battle lines, and that's collapse denial. So it's the utopians think we in essence, okay, let's use this analogy. It's always a mistake to use analogies on the internet, but I never learn anyway. So here I go with another analogy. Basically, we're the train going towards Cassandra crossing, the bridge is out. Now, what the technotopians want to do is accelerate the train so we can leap the canyon. Nobody says now that the canyon, isn't there or the bridge isn't out. We now say that we're barreling towards the canyon and the bridge. The technotopians say if we accelerate, and it's called accelerationism actually, is we can overleap the canyon and we can land on the other side. Okay, now the analogy holds pretty well for them because what's going to happen is basically we're going to speed up and hit the opposite wall of the canyon. There's no way that you could thread that needle to basically land the train on the track on the other side. You're just watching too many cartoons if you think we can pull that off. And to translate that into real terms, it means we'd have to geoengineer, we'd have to do carbon capture, we'd have to have solar panels, we'd have to transition. Just a million things. It would basically forget a moon launch. You basically got to get an Apollo launch with a million billion sequences things to just fall into place without error. And that's virtually impossible because we're just going into the stage where there's instability, where there's climate instability, there's political instability. So you couldn't build the ship of Theseus while it's still afloat anyway. So these guys are going to kill us in the attempt. But anyway, they would have to get too many things to go right to actually leap the canyon. And in the end, it's a denial of physics. In fact, I could show you, given enough time, that basically it's a denial of Boltzmann entropy. They're actually trying to leap the canyon without thinking there's any friction or gravity. And that's, basically we're at a stage where we very much at peak everything. So friction and gravity are the biggest things that we're going to face. So the idea that we can sail through and ignore those two crucial things is crazy, to the point where we have to consider them addicts in terms of like, addicted to the alien cortex and kind of Hilbert program perfection thinking. And we must see them as essentially addicts, and so they have to be treated as irrational people just on crack.
To add to that accelerationism, the same argument is for the existential risk of AI, that our computers are slower now than they will be in the future. So we need to get to AI faster, so like AGI faster, so that it's less of a threat because the computers are slower.
These guys are completely crazy, because you get the same thing like, no, we can't touch the economy because the economy has to be intact, because these things are going to be very expensive. So we're going to do fully automated luxury communism, but we need the capitalist economy intact because this is going to be very, very expensive. So we need, it's like, look, dude, the economy is collapsing. How do you think there's no ways you can generate the money to do this transition and do all these fantasies? It's just too hard to choreograph. And so yeah, it's never going to happen. So then, okay, go back to the train analogy. What I think there's only one sensible thing to do at this stage, and that's you try and sabotage the train, because you know that nobody's going to stop. Basically, that's the one sensible thing you can do. It looks like we're going to go slap bang into the canyon, but either way, what people that want to try and transition and want to do hydroponics and Green New Deal and stuff, we'll just basically carry on sailing into the canyon. That's all that's going to happen. The only thing we could do at this stage is try and stop the train. I don't think we can, but you do it anyway. You can see in that analogy, you would go with the one best hope and just carry on doing it and hope a black swan or something comes up in the meantime. But you know for sure that in the grade of insanity, the most insane are the guys who want to accelerate to leap over the canyon, because that's just straight out of the comic books. It's just crazy. And then the second grade thing is we'll slow the train down, so that basically we'll just drift into the big splat of Wile E. Coyote at the bottom of the canyon. But the only real thing is the thing that no one will do, and that's deindustrialize, involuntary emergency deindustrialization. You just got to fucking cripple this train, so if it either coasts to a halt just before the canyon, or it's not flying at a very high speed when it goes over.
But we're going back to the field manual question that Gary put in the comments.
That's
there. Because, when you said, Gary, about cutting the grass under our feet, how do we, it's the kind of, it would be nice to reflect on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That point here is that, whereas the field manual was trying to motivate people to do this, when it was in their situation, they could attack an enemy without necessarily disadvantaging themselves. Whereas this time around, you're directly attacking yourself as well. You've got to get the direct consequences at the same time. So there's that side of it. I'll leave it at that. Did you want to say something there?
So, it's not quite the same. Like, you see, it's okay. Going back to the resistance in France, when you're occupied by the Nazis, it's the same as any government. The U.S. government is the same as an occupying force. They might as well be, you know, in different uniforms. The French police and stuff in outside Vichy, France, they collaborated with the Nazis. So, you know, you could be arrested by a French policeman for a crime that was only a crime in the Nazis' eyes. So 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 it's not a divide. It's not like, oh, we're under occupation now. The Nazis are marching through the streets. They're an easy target. As soon as you under occupation, they take over all the civil administration. If you go and get papers, you go, and the guy might be an SS guard. He'll stamp your papers. It's no different to a uniform now. If you go in, say, downtown London, and you in a London borough, and go into a police station, just imagine the guy's in an SS uniform and you're under occupation. It wouldn't be any different. So now think of those guys under occupation doing resistance and ecotage, stuff like that. Well, well, there's some project, you know, it's when you get to the specifics, it's easy to see. There's some projects that, like oil infrastructure, all this kind of thing, that are very, very strategic. They're bottleneck projects and stuff, and then, you know, they natural targets. You're not undermining yourself. Okay, for example, there's a thing called M43, which was these power generators that were highly, highly secret, that were under Grand Central Station in New York. Now, those were crucial because they were not replaceable, and while the Allies were mobilizing for D-Day, if they didn't mobilize for D-Day, they were pretty well fucked. If they didn't make the window in 1944, they were fucked, because Germany would have got the V weapons, and Germany was way far advanced. They would have had rockets, ICBMs raining down on America by 1947. So or 1946 even. And so they were in a race. I mean, the Germans were far ahead. They had jet engines that were, you know, more advanced than Whittles and stuff, Heinkel. And so anyway, I paint this picture where they had to make this window, and it meant mobilizing for D-Day in June 1944. All of that could only happen with this massive convergence of troops getting onto troop carriers to take them to Britain. They all had to basically converge on this massive electrified rail system that wound up in Grand Central Station, and that was secretly powered by a couple of few power generators called M43 under the Grand Central Station itself, way down below. If anybody, a saboteur, had actually got a pocket full of sand and got it inside there, they would have just dropped the sand in the gears, and that would have stopped those machines. The company that made the machines, and the size of the machines was such that it would have, essentially they would have had to build the factory first before they could even start machining replacements. So it would have cost them the year, it would have cost them the window, it would have cost them the war. We would be having this conversation in German if somebody had got into that. As it happens, one of the workers got to Germany and told the Nazis that this was a very, very weak point. And the Germans actually landed 4 saboteurs by a U-boat in Jersey on a beach, and they tried to get there. They were intercepted. But if those guys had, they got very, very close to sabotaging that. Now, if you think about that, they weren't undermining themselves. If you knew that basically there was, say, a cable, an undersea cable that the internet survived on, if you knew of an LNG terminal, there's the LNG hubs where, because these guys are linear thinkers, they send all the LNG into one trading hub. I won't mention it because that could be illegal, but you can go and Google it. And basically it's a point of sale where all basically LNG suppliers in America send their LNG to this trading hub, and from there all the buyers take it and then distribute it all over the country. It's a massive bottleneck, just like M43. It wouldn't take much to take that out. Now you say, well, would you be undermining yourself? Well, no. What way would you be undermining you? Like, you couldn't. How would it affect your life if you lived in a cabin in the woods somewhere or something? Is that what am I misunderstanding what you mean by undermining?
No, it's but no, you've explained that very well, and that's perfectly valid, of course. But I mean, in terms of smaller actions, just in places that you know from your own personal experience. See, they're fairly big things that you've just spoken about that require a bit of insider knowledge, that kind of thing. But for a person who's just fairly isolated and just doing something that they've dreamed up for themselves, they're likely to disadvantage themselves straight away. Actually,
oh no, yeah, you mustn't do that. So okay.
Yeah.
So the big flaw in, say, XR's thinking is they must think in terms of finance. We're up against psychopaths. Psychopaths think of everything in terms of cost benefit. Now you must think of it in terms of how much is this going to cost me personally and the movement and the rebellion, and how much is it going to cost them? Well, the really good things cost you 5 cents and basically fuck them up something royal. Now, look at Roger Hallam, right? I'll take him as an example because it's probably not illegal to discuss it. But okay, he does drones against Heathrow. He launches the drones. They don't go very high. It's all in the open. Everybody discusses it. Half the movement just about splits and has a shit fit because of it. And then to cap it all, then he goes and gets voluntarily tells the police where he is, so he gets arrested. Saying, what the fuck is all this about? He winds up with, I don't know what he was fined, but I think it might be still sub judice. But anyway, everybody except the government, the planes were never delayed even for a second. Everybody on the wrong side paid dearly for a stupid, fucked up idea. Look at, say, the guys in XR on the street. In April, it cost them over £1 million to do the demonstrations. Nothing came out of those demonstrations. Absolutely zip, fuck all. Now, most of that £1 million went on giving vegan meals, because they said, well, you've got to give free meals to make people turn up and shit like that. Okay, I'll tell you, in the South African Revolution, right, starting from the first armed resistance, basically white people planting bombs, was that £1 million would have financed the first 10 years of the successful violent resistance in South Africa. Now, it's basically Chenoweth puts South Africa down to peaceful win, but I fucking tell you now, it was a fucking bombs every day war. It was all-out war. So, and masses of violence. So Erica Chenoweth doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. But anyway, my point is, if you had got that £1 million, and they're just basically given kids balloons with a little bit of window. You know what window is? A little strip of tinfoil, 14.25 centimeters long, and basically just the size of the microwave, basically radar wavelength. You let a helium-filled balloon and run away over Heathrow, I'll tell you what's going to happen. It's going to turn up on the radar as a big blip. It's basically it's chaff. It's what they used in the war for bombers, right? That's seriously so for the price of a balloon and a 14 centimeter piece of tinfoil, you have kept one of the major. Well, okay, I mean, obviously you wouldn't do this to Heathrow. I must say, absolutely, I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything illegal. Okay, what we're talking about here is the Uyghurs in China. So the Uyghurs would go, and they could keep the CCP planes, military planes, commercial airlines, freight on the ground for hours to days, just by, it cost under $1. So that kind of thing is so it's an asymmetric struggle, right? But because these guys are psychopaths, you can use their paranoia. They over surveilling, they're overreacting. Their system is too complex, it's too brittle. So there are too many communications. And so all of those are vulnerable. But what you ultimately want to do is find, okay, first of all, I mean, I'm talking quite advanced stuff here, but this is where, we'll talk about getting to. But where you start off with is learning the principles. They all scale up. So in your office, have a look at a bottleneck. Have a look at, say, the whole business functions on this one thing. Especially talk to make friends with the janitor and all these guys, the little guys, like in the office, the guy with the red hair and the stapler. Those guys that, live in the basement like trolls, they know the fucking business. They know all the vulnerable things and stuff. But even if a top executive, know that maybe the board meets on this thing and the board has a blind spot somewhere and they need to get loads of money, and go and arrange the finance for them. They'll be pleased as punch to see that you arranged $10 billion for them. Then that you just work it out on a spreadsheet. Say, if the company took this, they'd be fucked. And that, and that basically they're going to do it. If you arrange the financing for them, they would, they're so greedy they would take it. And so then you can go and put that to them. Say, hey, I've got you $10 billion at a very reasonable rate. And they say, ooh, that might ruin the company. You say, well, I don't think so. And then basically you fucked the whole company. By looking great, you'd probably get a bonus for doing that. So look at the asymmetry and stuff. So I've given you an example of at the top of a company how you could wreck it, and you could go down into the basement. That basically they say, everything revolves around this one thing in the company. The companies, I'll tell you, all companies are built on a lie, and very often the little guys in the basement, they know what the lie is. So, they all promoting a product, or they've got a wonder machine and it doesn't really work, but they all hide it. And then some little guy somewhere, he knows. And so you just find out that and publish the fact that this company is based on a lie. And you say, well, then I'm out of a job. And you say, yeah, well, don't do it necessarily to your own company. Or once you get sophisticated, go and get a job in a company in order to destroy it. Go and get a job in Exxon, and then go and find out ways which you can get a bonus and destroy the company at the same time. Oh, I didn't say Exxon. I meant some arbitrary. No, I very definitely didn't encourage anybody to go to Exxon and get a job and sabotage it. That is absolutely, don't misunderstand me. I meant, hypothetically, Uyghurs could do this if they had fossil fuel companies somewhere in China.
Can I say?
But just one more thing. In an office situation, you can fuck up things. Just like say, okay, an office copier. You see, this is an example of the paranoia. The office copiers, they all have watermarks and things. Where if you, for forensic reasons. Oh, by the way, this is important. If you don't use a photocopier for anything dodgy, because they put watermarks on it. But this is the paranoia of the system. So anyway, anything you photocopy will be traceable to a photocopier. But the same applies. Is they paranoid. So if you put a dollar bill on most photocopiers, they'll disable the photocopier because they put in protections to stop people photocopying money. Well, it's what you want to do is go to your office printer and put dollar bills on it, because it fucks it up. Do it every fucking day. You see what I mean? It costs you nothing. You just say, I don't know why this photocopying machine's always fucking up. You see what I mean? Is you use the paranoia against them. They've built paranoia into the system.
But that's what I wanted to come at. When we were talking the other day, Hugh, about surveillance, and it was supposed to be one of the topics today, but we can never but cover a part of one topic in our talks, I think, and it's very good that way. But this degree of surveillance that exists, and that I've looked a bit through the videos that Ryan put on Discord and some other ones. You were saying that there's such an enormous amount of data that they are collecting that it's just going to kind of overwhelm them. But can you overload the data? Can you just inundate a system of surveillance with so much stuff that it can handle it?
Yeah.
That's what the PRISM program had happened to it. So The like Snowden's revelations, that program never caught a terrorist or anything like that, because there was just so much data they didn't know what to do with it. But I think that it's naive to think that we will that the data sitting on servers will never be used against us, because there's a lot of it. Like Google has a lot of servers, and they have a lot of data, and they'll figure out a way to make money with it if they can. And that's, even if the technology is not here now, I think it's that the trying to overload Google's servers would backfire. I think they would just say,
okay,
yes, please.
okay. I must talk here. So okay, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You're not talking about a brute force attack against the things. You think of it more in bottleneck. So a common mistake, and this is what they want you to think. They want you to think of surveillance as the eye of God, and there's no escape. Okay, the first thing about AI and surveillance and everything, it's a tool. It's an extension of a human's arm. People think that it's like Judge Dredd and autonomous and stuff, but like AlphaGo, there's a team. It's actually just just a force magnifier for a group of guys sitting in a room. So don't forget that everybody forgets those little guys sitting in a room. So it doesn't matter what they collect. If they collect stuff, and what they're largely doing with surveillance is backtracking. It's insurance for them. So the civilian planes and the satellites and stuff, and they're recording the ground. Nobody's ever going to look at the vast majority of this data. It's all being archived and largely by Amazon. But what they use it for is when there's some incident, when there's a terrorist attack, if the Uyghurs go after the Chinese Communist Party, then what they're going to do is they're going to follow all the perps back from that incident. They're going to track where their car came from. They're going to mine all that data all the way back till they find their house or their starting point and stuff like that. But the thing to know is the states, all states, are massively understaffed. They're absolutely stretched with human personnel. So the aim is not to overwhelm the servers and the machines. The aim is to overwhelm the little elves behind the machine. So let me give you an example. You have all these cameras on the street that came, say, in London. They came after the IRA. And the way they worked was the IRA were putting bombs in London. So what they did was they knew they were coming in from the port. Don't smile. They knew they were coming in from the ports and stuff into the center of London. So they put cameras all over those routes. When something happened in London, they couldn't stop the actual attack. They would then go back in time and look at all and piece it all together. And then they found the guys like this, and Mary's bomb. They tracked them down to Gibraltar, and they executed them in Gibraltar without trial. Now, you see, they did that by backtracking surveillance. Okay, now, once you know that that's the way it works, consider this. Their cameras now, then of course, linear thinkers, they completely overdo surveillance. Now they think, well, that works so fucking awesome. Let's put cameras everywhere. And then the whole world followed Britain because it worked so well against the IRA. Okay. So now you think, well, you can't move in Britain because there's a surveillance camera on you everywhere. Well, it's actually a flaw in the system. Think about this. If you're really smart. Okay, now let's move away from Britain so I don't spend the rest of my life in a small cell, and talk about the Uyghurs in China. Okay, there's the Uyghurs in China, and like, don't extradite me to China, whatever you do. Okay,
careful. I'm. Think of me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Shit. Okay. Kurt Vonnegut and these alien beings that have live in Atlantis, and they're heavily surveillanced. Okay. Now, the Venetian. Okay, so they live on the planet Venus, and they're heavily surveilled. Okay. Now, as activists, you know that these guys are looking at these systems. The systems, they have gunshot triangulation and stuff. So you set up a bit of theater. It's plausibly deniable. You just have, you know, three guys. You dress. You have four, you know, basically actors. You dress one of them up as a policeman in the Venetian police uniform, and you have the other three guys come and right in front of a surveillance camera, they stab him to death. I mean, completely play acting. And you film it. It's plausibly deniable because if somebody said, "What the fuck are you doing?" you'd say, "Oh no, we're just shooting a movie. We just want to make a awareness thing about, you know, make you get the picture." It's completely implausibly deniable. But if imagine the guys in the control room see this little act going on, well, they're going to dispatch the entire Venetian police force. Okay, that's very expensive. What's your outlay? Few hours in an afternoon, and you scarper. Okay, that when the entire police force arrives, that's a lot. You know, wasting police time is illegal in most countries. It's like is a misdemeanor. You probably get it 6 months or something in Britain for wasting police time. But on Venus, so you know, you can basically do evasion and escape pretty easily. Now, if there isn't any dead policemen, they're not going to spend a long time trying to figure out what happened. But consider how much time you wasted. Now, do that again. Get other people to do it. Now, what's happening is a weak point. The human, because humans are behind these machines, the humans are the weak point. That's the weak element. So human psychology and the human element is the weakness in all of this. So what's going to happen if you stage one of these mock police stabbings every single week and you get everybody to do it? Maybe in XR, you get 100 to happen. Well, you're either going to basically spread them very thin, in which case you're making a perfect diversion and then you can go do something else across town, or
We can't hear you anymore, Hugh.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You're gone. Can't
They
hear
might have
you.
got him.
Yeah, they got him. There's been some parachuting troops over a boat in the Med.
From Venus.
From Venus. How do you say, you know, in Star Trek is being beamed?
Oh dear, oh dear.
Oh my God. Especially in the middle of what we're talking about. The levels of paranoia are getting higher and higher.
Oh,
Okay.
what should we do?
I don't know. Anyway, we've been a long time talking, so maybe we should just...
Yeah, we've been talking from. Yeah, maybe it's a good time.
Yeah.
I do have one thing to add before we stop on surveillance. And that's that when you have these administrators that are making these decisions on which kinds of surveillance programs to fund, you know, often you'll like, let's say you had a terrorist detector AI program that was 99% accurate, and then you applied it to all of the US, say. So there's like 300 million people, and then 1% of 300 million would be like three. Sorry, I went to public school. Like 30,000 or 300,000. One of those numbers. And those would be the people that you would bring in. Now there may be say, I don't know, 10,000 terrorists, or maybe 1,000 terrorists, like, at all. So you're bringing in like orders of magnitude more people than there are who would actually be a true match, and that makes for a really dangerous situation, even if none of the technology really works. And to be honest, most of these algorithms that you can put out there are, they'll maybe be 30 or 70% accurate if you're lucky. So what I'm afraid of is the sociopaths, saying yes to a program like that when it's presented to them, saying, "Oh, it's 99% accurate. I could never, what's the downside?" And just going along with it and saying it's cheap because I don't have to hire people. I don't have to hire detectives. I just have this AI do it for me. And when you're doing these kinds of theater in front of the surveillance cameras, you are providing instant decision points for those sociopaths to decide whether to ramp up their game. And I worry about that because they're not smart enough to know what the consequences are of flipping that switch.
So yeah, but my point is that at some point in the process, these AIs are not autonomous, right? So they need, at some point, a human has to get involved. They have to make an assessment, and they have to put
the
some
humans
boots
usually
on the
provide
machine.
the violence.
Yeah. So but at some point there has to be some kind of Agent Smith can't be an AI, right? He has to be a human being, and he has to basically then assess all the data and then decide if it's worth pursuing. Now that's the weak point, right? Because not only can that person be overwhelmed, but you have to think of it in terms of a dance with that person. The AI is a tool. It's an extension for him, right, or her, but mainly him. But the way to see it is it's an extension of the alien cortex. So there is an alien cortex behind it. It's not, you're not going to be arrested by silicon. So that's the weak point, is that you remember that you're communicating through the surveillance network and the AI, but you're doing a dance with this human behind it, and the human's the weak point. So if in terms of talking about choreographed theater and stuff, that somebody has to make, some senior person has to it kind of bubbles up at some point. It'll have to bubble up to a human decision maker to decide if these are kids fucking around, if this is a genuine attempt to waste police time. They have to make that evaluation independent of the AI. And so forget about the AI and that. You're really in a dialogue with that actor, the human flesh and blood actor. So you
I
shouldn't
disagree
lose
with
sight of
you
that.
because the codes, the health codes, are all done by AI, and the humans are essentially just there to see if there's a green box on your phone. Like a lot of I think when the human is actually the most trusting part of the system. If people read something off of a computer screen, they think it's fact. And that's why we had the 2008 financial crisis, because people thought those loans were good and everything. Like they were just trusting what their machine said. And I think that, if an automated system recommends something, then you have a lot of distance for a psychopath to not even get that empathy feeling of knowing what the consequences are of saying, go ahead and round them up.
I know,
we're having that happen.
You misunderstand. So you misunderstand. You don't need that empathy thing. You're not relying on that in any way. What you just take it back. So what you're trying to do is to think of it in terms of cost benefit and really a balance sheet. So think of it in financial terms, and that and don't lose sight of that. So all these things, right? Don't worry about the nitty gritty of those kind of things, whether there's a human involved, whether there's empathy and stuff. What you're trying to do is bring down the system. And the way to do that is to nickel and dime it to death. That's really what the point is at this stage, anyway, is to nickel and dime them to death in terms of anything you do against the system must cost pennies compared to how much it costs them. And so you have to have a look at how much does it cost to do this AI? How much does it cost to follow up on it? If it's not cost beneficial to them, then double down. Make them increase it more. Make them invest more in something that costs them more. So you're looking at a balance sheet. You're not trying to outfox them, and you're not trying to get sympathy and stuff like that. It's just in terms of basically make them and their paranoia spend too much. So they're already spending too much. You see, at some point, I mean, they've already overspent the budget that any sensible state would invest in all of this shit. And so the thing is to get them to spend more, right? So it's does any of that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. But I'm reminded of what you were saying about having a state that can't afford to keep the people in the camps anymore.
Yeah. Look, take an analogy of the camp, right? So like Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a labor camp, but they're not really the Zionists and stuff have misled us all and stuff. They're not putting people in Auschwitz so that they could gas them and kill them. They want to extract labor from them. Now, it's a very shitty form of labor. Slave labor is very, very inefficient. So you want to make that more inefficient till eventually they don't run camps because they're just fucking not cost beneficial. Eventually they say it's not worth feeding these bastards because we don't get enough labor. We could go and get willing people to do this, and it would, basically they'd do it better than these unwilling people. And then the camp system falls down. I mean, it's an analogy, right? It's not. It's a way to think of our liberal, scientific industrial complex. Is it works for them because everybody's cooperating. If people switch their allegiance away from it, say if they defect from the military industrial system and say, I don't believe in anymore, I don't have hope in anymore, I think if we stick with this, we're going to basically, the train's going to go right over the canyon and kill us all. We need to stop or slow this down. As soon as that infectious idea, hopefully infectious idea, starts to spread, then people's lack of cooperation stops the system working, and that's what stops it. Even before you get to the point where you're doing serious, M43 sand in the gears ecotage. It's the major obstacle is to get people to switch allegiance and to just start non-cooperation.
That makes sense. I mean, the whole weakness of the capitalist system is that it is thriving on efficiency and not on creating redundancies in it. You're trying to grow and grow and grow, and that makes single points of failure.
And it's also
and it gets more Byzantine. Oh, sorry, Sophie, but it gets more Byzantine as it goes. It gets more complex. Yeah.
It's also thriving on schools. I mean, you can't if you don't get the slaves out of nice little schools, well, you won't have any slaves.
The people in schools are the first to probably defect. I mean, I think that in spirit they have already largely, the more intelligent they are, the more they've defected. I mean, if I talk to my kids, it's the completely dumb ones that are okay with where we headed, even to the point of saying, my daughter tells me that basically Trump's going to win because we're talking in one of the most liberal states in America, and she says all these people say, Trump can handle it. It's like it's not going to be that bad, And so they haven't defected from the system. They think they're going to grow up, have the life their parents had. So that's what's so dangerous about what XR is doing in this wire post or shit post about this new woman, Emily Grossman, because this is exactly the wrong way to go. It is basically she's encouraging hope, encouraging complicity with the system, saying everything's okay, and then basically they're going to go out. She says, "Oh, and then get on the streets." She's going to basically drain all the passion out of the movement. Basically, everybody's going to let off steam, and they're going to go back and be compliant with a system that's going to kill us.
But who is she?
And she's directly responsible.
But who is she?
She's
She's probably put there.
She's basically they seem to be grooming her to put her in charge to replace Roger Hallam. So basically, she's going to be the cheerleader for the leaderless holocracy. Yeah, big joke. But it's terribly, terribly bad because we need young people to defect from the system and stop supporting it. And she's encouraging the exact opposite. You see, why this is so bad is if she carries on too long, she'll take, if she was successful, I don't think she will be, but if she takes a large group of the youth movement and, is successful in motivating them for protest on the street, she'll wind up in an escalation of commitment. In other words, that if you go down in the street and you do dysfunctional protest that actually supports the system and shows that you actually believe in the system enough to protest to the government, you're doing a dysfunctional activity that as it goes on, it gets harder and harder to defect from the system that you put so much energy into trying to transform. And that's the danger, that she's going to lead a bunch of people into that. And then you get entrenched denial that has nothing to do with our situation. It's all about covering their investment it's covering their bad investment. So youth will basically say, I've invested so much in trying to reform this system that I'm not going to give up now. And that's a terribly dangerous point to get to. And that's where, if she was successful, that's where she might get to.
It's the fallacy of the sunk cost in accounting or finance.
Yeah, fallacy of sunk cost. That's it, exactly. Yeah, it's basically pursuing the sunk cost. So our civilization is a sunk cost, and we must let the youth know that, so they stop investing in. But she's encouraging the sunk cost fallacy. She's saying, okay, society hasn't worked, it's a sunk cost, but we carry on investing in it and it'll pay off eventually. That's what she's doing. And that's what all of them are doing. So that is, but the way to do it is kind of to get them out of it is to get them to do something against the system. Is the smallest, tiniest little thing, right? Is and so okay, this is running long, but all this stuff is important, and it's not bad to actually if you don't mind the long distance marathon on this one, it's worthwhile because it's deep, it's buried deep now because we run long. The only people left listening here might be good potential recruits. So that's why I'm happy to carry on at this stage, because the audience is whittled down to probably people you really want. So okay, so what I want to say at this point is the important thing is to get people to do something that shows that they've defected, no matter how small it is. So it can be just a micro thing that then it might escalate. But here's the thing: is it can be very, very light indeed. It can almost be symbolic, and so we can, or I don't know, some hypothetical people on Venus say, can do stuff that's bark and not bite. So even if you don't have to get people to bite, you can just get them to bark, and that's a step in the right direction. So let me take an example for you. if you say, imagine on Venus, they had fossil fuel cars and you wanted people to stop driving them, right? Now, I'll tell you what happened in South Africa is something or similar. They didn't have ecological aims in mind, but they basically they knew all white people drove a car. So basically, the simplest thing you can do is open up the fuel tank and sabotage the fuel, and basically, it costs you a bit of piss, and it's amazingly expensive for the person that owns the car. So we're straight out of the Citizens Sabotage Manual from the French Resistance. That kind of behavior, but think about it. What happened then after that is, of course, some capitalist in South Africa came and made a mint by doing, locking fuel filler caps. Back in the 80s and stuff, fuel filler caps didn't used to lock. But then quickly they started selling locking ones and then of course you develop this dialogue, and then of course then they would just go and put a nail under your tank. They'd get out of your car, smack a nail under your tank. The whole thing keeps on developing. It's a dance, one step forward, two steps back. But this is an important thing, is that the resistance can take two steps back and two steps back and two steps back, and you think, well, we're not getting anywhere. No. If you think of it in terms of a balance sheet, they think they're winning, but they could, on balance, if you look at the balance sheet, how much it's costing them to win, they're actually losing. And so you can lead them in, and that's really what you want to do. Now, think of the thing about the filler caps and the fuel tanks that happened in South Africa. There's an even smarter move, and that's what's even cheaper is you go and you put a little sticker. Be careful, you don't want to put a sticker that's, like I said, from a photocopying machine, because they've got watermarks for exactly this kind of shit. But assume you make your own little printing thing with a potato head or something like that on neutral paper and stuff. You make little stickers, and you go and put that sticker on people's car. Just super glue it over the fuel tank. Say, we're giving you notice. This is XR with a big XR symbol on it, saying we're giving you notice that all fossil fuel cars in this thing is basically from this date. We will start basically putting a nail in your tank and draining your fuel, or we will start contaminating the fuel. Basically, we're going to start fucking you up. Okay. Now imagine the shit that comes down on that. All it's cost you is a bunch of stickers, and you go out at night on somewhere where you're sure there's no surveillance. Just plaster it all over, some little hokey town. Now, there's going to be shit in the newspapers. There's going to be shit in the police force. There's going to be mayhem to come. You don't even have to do anything illegal, really. They've done it all for you with the paranoia. Okay, then you can go and do that in different areas. Eventually they get, oh, these guys are just full of shit. They're just calling you up. Well, you can't call them up. You have to be committed enough to go through with it, because at some point you have to prove to them you're not just full of shit. So then when they get to the point where they think, oh, this is all bluff, you go and show them. They'll call your bluff, and then you have to basically follow through. But that's a tiny little infringement once, to just prove that you're capable of doing it. From there on out, you can go back to the threat. So the threat and the time wasting and stuff is the real thing. You see, what XR is doing is, Chenoweth led them up the garden path, telling them, no, it has to be nonviolent, because it's this whole nexus of false logic. So she's saying it has to be nonviolent. Why? Because otherwise you can't recruit the
We can't hear you here.
It's Venus again.
Yeah. Oh, he'll find his way back, I guess.
We can't hear you at all. The sound is gone. Oh.
I think he'll come back.
This
Yeah,
time.
he'll start again. Yeah.
There.
Oh, in the comments it said, did you hear about the man who kept calling 911 asking if they wanted to buy egg rolls? Then he would hang up.
I didn't understand.
Oh, the man who kept calling police, he kept calling
Oh,
police
yes.
and to buy egg rolls from them, like they were a restaurant, I guess.
Are there? Yeah, are there any anarchist talking points against like police? Because I feel like there's. Oh, is Hugh back? Are you speaking? Oh, we can't hear you still.
We can't hear you still.
We can't hear you. Well,
Hugh,
thanks
if you have a
for
phone.
thanks for the comments, because I never thought of looking at the comments. We should all look at them because there's some things in there, some questions.
Yeah, I didn't know they were there either. It's a good
didn't know.
idea.
So focused on the conversation, I forgot to look. Fallacy of this. I think we're going to.
Fallacy of sunk cost. Hugh called it covering a bad investment. Protecting the system feeds commitment to it, which is called covering a bad investment or the fallacy of a sunk cost.
I got there's a message. We can't get any microphone.
Can't
or maybe
get it.
maybe we'll have to stop the recording anyway.
Yeah.
Because in a
Well, we've been going for
hear me
2
now?
hours.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, so okay. If people want to start, we can start. But yeah, I was just finishing. What's that?
The recording is going to stop in about 5 minutes, I'd say.
Okay, so let's round it off. But the major thing is that I'm trying to encourage you to see that if you make the thing light enough, you can get past the Erica channel with deadlock. Because the mistake that XR has made is that if you declare a priori that you're absolutely non-violent and you have no teeth, you've just told the government to fucking ignore you. You've just basically advertised the fact that you're absolutely safe. The government doesn't have to worry about it. See, the government is psychopathic. XR thinks that, oh, they're people and they have a heart and they can, the government can do all these responses that are human responses. The government is a machine. Think of it as the alien cortex, right? So you're talking to the alien cortex or a complete psychopath. It can fake empathy, it can fake human emotions, but it's not human. You must think of it as, so get over that. And then you've just told this machine what your limits are. Now the machine is doing cost-benefit analysis. And so it looks at XR's protest and says, what's the cost? Virtually fuck all. In fact, it's probably a net plus. Most analysts would look at XR's protest and say, these are actually a pretty good thing. They basically, get youth aggression. Can anybody hear me? Oh yeah, so basically it's a safety valve. It lets the youth let off steam. It's it blocks London occasionally, but it's net overall it probably is the government probably assesses it as beneficial. And so then XR thinks, oh, they're putting pressure on the government. No, they're basically draining resources from the movement chronically. They're hemorrhaging resources from the movement. They're hemorrhaging spirit. They're making an escalation of commitment into the sunk cost. There's no pressure on the government. If you did anything that really pressured the government, like blockaded something that really mattered, they would sweep you out of there. I mean, look, they went into the city. Now going into the city, now that's fucking dynamite. How long did XR last in the city? They swept them out of there in a second. Because then there's real cost benefit. You start fucking with Threadneedle Street. It's basically, there's trillions of dollars just pouring through there every day. You start fucking with that, that's a major hemorrhage to the government. The government's going to react like fuck. But you see that they even got close to threatening the government, and the government went ape. And so basically the fact that XR isn't being, they aren't trouncing XR, they're just teasing them a bit, saying, don't be naughty, we'll make you we'll classify you as terrorists. The fact that they're just doing that mild intimidation means that, in effect, they're aiding the government, and the government is winning. So the very first step they've got to do is say, this is no limits. This is like in Hong Kong, Lam Chow, to the death. We will do anything. It's basically, this is a climate emergency. The human race is at stake. There are no limits. According to morality and you name it, we can do what we fucking like, basically, because of self-defense. And so we can do anything, violence, whatever, you name it, genocide. We could do anything because of the stakes. It would be legitimate. And if